Okay, so going back to our discussion, so there were a lot of people who slowly showed their interest in helping the Filipinos to have their own special education centers in the Philippines, and particularly it happened and it started in Manila. So we have Mr. David Borrow. He's more into the children with the hearing impairment or the deaf and the blind in Manila. We also have the famous Miss Delight Rice, the first American teacher educator for the administration of special schools in Manila. Basically, they name it here in the Philippine National School for the Blind. But first, the first school is actually school for the deaf because there were more children who were identified and there were a lot of awareness for the children who had hard of hearing. Maybe it was a result for the environmental risk because of the machinery on the guns, on the weaponry. Muna siguro no daghan kayo ang nangabungol during this time. And because of those a lot of factors, risk factors, with all those elements in the atmosphere, some people also has been affected or diagnosed with the visual impairment or sight. So that is why the School for the Blind was also created. Now, as the year evolved, since the Filipinos has been a colony of the Americans, they also start to slowly educate the people that there are ways to educate these children with impairments and handicap, as they mentioned. So we also have this Philippine Association for the Deaf, where the special education specialist was founded in 1926. So this is just the timeline on why special education and how it happened in history of the Philippines. Another one is we have Mrs. Maria Villa Francisco, known to be the first principal, Filipino principal for School for the Deaf and the Blind. And aside from those visual and hearing impairment, then they ventured to the physical disability, which is the crippled children. So these terms that I have are no longer used in the sense of special education, but somehow these were the names during this year in 1945. Then, aside from those different disabilities, we also have gifted people and gifted individual. As we know that science school, who among you here are from science school, they always train holistically children who are inclined for science and for inventions and have good academical achievements. Now, moving forward, another person was also helpful in the presence of the special education, and slowly they have this village for adoption, village to train the people, and even in in Cebu, we also have this one still present this time. Every first week of August, they have the we call it the white cane or the sight saving day. So what they do is they have an awareness for children who have visual impairment, and every August also they would have a lot of activities that would allow people to have to know different individuals who might have this disability but still they are still sikat, they are famous and still able to do their livelihood. Then a first parent teacher work conference was slowly organized and eventually it was the rest was history. In our education also, we have a lot of organizations that supported and helped for the programs, for the services for special children. In 1957, we have the Bureau of Public Schools. So usually before, ang mga names sa atong Department of Education kay mga bureau siya. So it's like a small chunk of group of people, but now they have already different departments. So Bureau of Public Education schools where it's more on inclusive already, so they will welcomed and they would allow the students to have zero reject. So for example, if you're a parent of a child with special needs, so pwede na mo magpa-enroll. Unlike before na, ipriso ra ang child or maulaw ang family to have a special child. Next, we also have a foundation where many sponsors and benefactors would help in the teacher to provide programs and trainings and how to integrate these classes to children who are blind. Then slowly, many schools also opened their special education courses that includes private institutions, private universities, just like Manila Youth and Rehabilitation Center. We also have the qualification for special education teachers where they need to be trained and have to study again certain concepts and get their certifications to be labeled as special education teachers. Then it was in the Philippine Normal College where they actually these started with the special education teacher scholars. So during the time, pag 1994 man nag-start ang licensure examination for teachers. So what they do is, before, ang mga teacher, if they would graduate from an institution or university, they can just teach if they are capable. But in 1994, everyone was already required to get the licensure examination for teachers. In 2017, it was renamed to BLEPT, or Board of Licensure for Educational and Professional Teachers, until it was renamed last 2019 LEPT na sad siya. So licensure examination for professional teachers. So with this test that you have, you are required to take this accreditation, and then you will be given the ID. First, that's a 3-year contract for you to become a licensed teacher. That means you are allowed to teach in the private or public sector. Now, the Philippine Normal College, during that time in 1994, they have a lot of provisions for the questionnaire in the licensure examination exam, particularly sa SPED. So, first year, this time, mahappy pa mo because you don't have a test in the special education. When you will take your board exam, it's only general education, that is 150 items, and then prof ed education 150 items. So if graduate ka, for example, sila si Juliet, sila si Bernard, si Elaine for ECE, if you're gen ed, ECE and SPED, you only have two subjects to focus: general education and professional education. But the rest, the English major, you'll have three: general education courses, prof ed, and your major subjects. So out of the 150 each items, you need to aim 117 correct answers. Tama, Juliet, so that you will be part of the top notchers. Oh, kaya mo yan, Bernard and Elaine. Si Mary, kaya nyo.
Laban na, Bernard.
Laban lang
Ay,
yan.
makayapan sa dani, miss. Uy,
Laban lang.
Yeah, so that is like next year na mo na mo take sa inyong licensure examination. So hopefully, you will bring again the prestige and the honor for USJR. Kaya wala na tayo kuan, top notcher. But maybe with you guys, kamo na mo top 1. So that's the goal for it. And if that's the case, there are questions in the prof ed education that relates to special education. Usually, nani si Delight Rice, nani ang Philippine Normal School, what is the first SPED school in the Philippines. Muna siya ang usually na mga questions nga manggawas. Now, there are so since Philippine Normal College had welcomed to be the first teacher scholar for the blind for children, meaning makaskwela na ang blind person with the use of braille and some assistance, another school also welcomed, that is the University of the Philippines. So children who are teachers who are trained to become teachers for children who are having behavioral problems or emotionally disturbed has been part of their arts and sciences courses. And then it was also connected to the teacher education or in the College of Education. Then Department of Education, di ba, before Bureau of Education, now Department of Education had created their memorandum. So what are those tasks intended? What are those expectations if you're a teacher for the blind? So basically, um, the education for the blind was famous. Why? Because of the invention of Mr. Louis Braille. So the Americans, they are slowly transporting those Braille system, the way of writing using the six dots, and they also educated some of these teachers. And the rest of the disabilities were not yet looked upon into during these years. So UNESCO also slowly created an impact for children who are mentally challenged or who are retarded. And since then, in 2000, it's where the special education had really boomed because more Filipinos has been welcomed in United States for the teaching position, and they are receiving a lot of awards, a lot of funding, and some Filipino teachers who were there in United States also became principals of a certain schools and certain counties. And of course, if Filipino ka, you would always encourage co-Filipino here in the Philippines to also get special education courses and teach there abroad. Okay? So there are actually legal bases in our special education. So pwede ka mapriso if you belittle these special children. So in 1935, that's where special education took place. Murag full implementation with all those protection on legal basis, laws, and legislation. Then we have Republic Act 356, an act to promote the education of the blind in the Philippines. Meaning, dili na ka mo say no or mo reject if blind ang imong child or if they are visually impaired. Another one is an act establishing a 10-year teacher program for teachers of special and exceptional children. Meaning, there is this 10-year free education for special children in a public school, like from elementary until high school. It's actually free for them, that is intended for public schools, that we cannot really have the zero reject. We also have an article um, that states that there should be hopefully there was a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education that will be relevant for these young children. So there are actually a lot. We also have presidential decree during Ferdinand Marcos that is known as Child and Youth Welfare Code, where the people are given the um, reminder for the rights of the special children. Then, since many people has been advocating for special children, a lot of laws, presidential decree, and batasang pambansa has been enacted. Just like this Batasang Pambansa Bilang 344, or what we known as the accessibility law. Like if you can check on those public utility jeepney, di ba na ay murag sticker nga kanang gasakay og wheelchair. So that position there in the front seat is intended for PWD. But kita, murag excited kita muuli asa ta, maguna-una jud ta sa front seat no. Kay di ka ginahan mo sikit og other people or comfortable kay usara ang pwede makalingkod sa front seat, but that area there is actually intended for PWD or persons with disability, and they have actually a law. So in case na mo moingon din na nga PWD nga ako man diri dapat molingkod, so mo give way gid ta. Another one is the celebration of first day of August for the White Cane Safety Day, for assuring the awareness for the Sight Saving Day. Another Republic Act 7610, an act of providing for strong deterrence and special protection for children against child abuse, exploitation, a lot of violations. Then we also have Presidential Proclamation 361 to set every third week of July for National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week celebration. So there are actually so many laws protecting our special children, and as a SPED teacher, as a teacher, you need to know this one. One more thing, they are actually supposed to enjoy the Republic Act 7277, the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons, where they are having 20% discount on different fare, either sa ticket sa adto Bohol, Palawan, or mga going to Cagayan de Oro with TransAsia, with Cebu Pacific, or even when they ride a taxi or tricycle. So na siya dapat discount. So sometimes also when they go for medical checkups, they will receive this 20% discount. So same with those senior citizen, they should avail the 20% discount. So sometimes ma-abuse ni sila kay dadun sila sa ilang mga family members. Uy, na kay PWD ID no, biabi na kay ato nang gamiton kay natay discount. But it should be for them to use in the validity. So there are so many ranges for the programs and services intended for them. So let's name them one by one. Okay pa bata guys? Are you learning so far? So did you see the history?
Daghan kay dates, miss. Makakuha
Yes.
Yes,
ko.
right.
Okay. Don't don't
Love it this date.
uh, don't worry. We will not maybe few lang ato ang i-include ana sa atong exam. Okay? But in the licensure examination, mo to siya ang balik-balik. Magna Carta 7277. Mo to siya given with 20% discount. Okay. So, going back, there are different programs, services since special education in the Philippines had thrived with all those laws, mga dates, kanus apa to sila gipang promulgate. Now, there are also ways on how to educate. If you don't want your child to go to school, it's okay. We can offer these services. If you're a SPED graduate in the future and you don't want to be a teacher in the special education, kay na kay 15 or 10 kids nga manglabay og plato nimo, there are other ways to be employed. So number one, first is when we graduate as a SPED teacher, as a teacher, or OTPT, we can work in a special education center. So it might be a small school where it's basically a school setup. So the limit for special education teacher is 10 kids, the same disability. But in the public school, it's a different story. Kaya na say 15 kids with multi-level or multi-disability. We also have
Nag-graduate means mag-cashier.
mag-cashier, no? So, may graduate kinasagay sa no, makita na to. Or mag-call center.
Kita-kita lang ta.
Okay?
Samba ko.
Okay, so you can be part of special education where it's promising. They have a promising salary. So, if you don't want to be in a sped school or center, you can have special class or self-contained class. So meaning this is more on a intensive program. Like for English, you can be in the remedial or resource room. So imong buhaton kay magpabasa ra jud ka sa bata nga example lisod siya for reading activities or dyslexic siya or dysgraphia ang iyang problem. Pwede ra gid mo magkuan one-on-one class. So I have a friend. She's working right now in California. She is 5 years siya sped teacher in Zapatera Special Education School, but now she is in the self-contained class, meaning she is only waiting for the child. Duha ra iyang student actually. She's waiting for the child to just go to her reading class. That is a self-contained class. Unya mag-reinforce ra gyud siya sa reading. Mora na, and she's enjoying $40,000. Pila man na i-calculate Bernard, that's her annual fee, 40,000 salary for the self-contained education. Another one is the students can be put into the integration of the mainstreaming program. So meaning, si special education student, mo-attend siya together with the regular students. And mainstreaming can be divided into two. It can be partial, it can be full mainstream. What will happen or what does it mean? For example, if a child is having autism, pwede siya mo join sa iyang mga classmate nga regular students. Or mao na ma-happen nga hala ngano naman ni autistic diri nga bata nya different man ni siya kaayo because it's allowed in the educational system. The child is enrolled in the full mainstream. It can also be partial. So there are several subjects that the child would join in, and then other subjects lain na pud siya nga school nga moadto. And as a teacher, as a regular teacher, our school are welcoming this integration and the power of mainstream program. So, Mauna, you are tasked to get these special education courses because you should know how to determine them. Another one is special day school. So this is an educational program where that certain child will also meet just a regular mainstream group, but then there's special day where he had to meet the other children with the same disability. Another activity is the residential school. So usually this is offered to the children who are aggressive or mga mentally challenged. Kaya nga naman, kung i-include nimo sila sa mga regular people, either mapaakan, malabayan, or mapusilan. Kaya mo ni sila. So they are just contained in the residential school. Either they have tutorial services or the services would go to them. Like moadto ang OTPT, or moadto ang mga counselor sa ilang balay, or they are experiencing cerebral palsy, so it's difficult for them to mobilize. So that is why they have residential schools. There are so many support services given. So for example, mo-graduate na mo-SPED, unya di mo ginahan mag-SPED, or if you want to venture some more and educate yourselves, you can actually align in the further studies for, like, you can have clinical psychologists where you would be assigned for the testing for the academics of the children's level, or the amount of their academic standards. Then, since you are more on medical side, since somehow a lot of sciences, we have to learn these things, you can also venture to become a medical doctor or a dentist. Then you will be working with young children. You can also have further studies in Sibudok for ophthalmologists, for blind and for visual impairment. Or you can also explore in the ears, di ba? Learning about the ears and be the otologist for the hard of hearing, mga hearing loss or hearing impairment. Then we also have neurologists and child psychiatrists to study their behavior of these children and how they can be helped with your program. Another thing is speech therapist. This is offered also in University of the Visayas. If you have 180,000, you can join their 1 year program and become a speech therapist. So usually ang mga SPED graduate, if daghan silang money, they would proceed to this one, speech therapist niya. Mahal ni siya sa states ang ilahang work. Then we have OTPT, usually naman ni sa kuan, sibudok na mga subjects or courses for children with physical disabilities. An interpreter for the deaf. Before, when I was a fresh grad, master man kay nako ang sign language, I was able to work with ABS-CBN because my brother is a mass comm graduate, and he works in ABS-CBN TV Patrol as a writer or kanang mga mukha sa mga news. One time, he asked me, kanang, nang naay nangita og interpreter sa mo ang kuan sa ABS-CBN. So I was there. I get to enjoy like 700 per 30 minutes na pag-interpret to the kanang kuan. Naragod ko sa kilid kanang magdo sa sign ko kita man na kana sa TV.
Yes, miss.
So I had that job before in ABS-CBN TV Patrol, and sometimes kay wrong ganito nga akong gipangkuan gipang side makipaspas man kaayo si either si Leo Lastimosa or katong isa ka girl siya magkuan sa balita. So we don't do the sign in every words, but you just get the gist, and then you you do the action or you do the signing. So it helps with the communication. Another thing is that churches this time are offering interpretation for the Holy Mass. Di ba naman nasa simbahan nun ay magkuan, mag-sign-sign din ha. So during summertime, na nag-comment nga, ngano man ni, uy, ngano na may mag-TikTok sa kilid. So, they were uneducated somehow that those people who are on the screen, on that small box, they're actually interpreting the words for the children who are having hard of hearing. Another support services that we can offer is the orientation and mobility for the blind. So, kana bitong, there are actually dogs. There are dogs who are trained to help the children for the orientation, makahelp sa kanang movement for the people with visual impairment. Yes, do we have
Excuse me,
any
Miss.
reaction? Yes.
Miss, di ko ni Chloe. May Arugoso na siya gichat, Miss.
What is that?
Yung si Lara daw, Miss. Permi siya asking to join.
Okay. Okay, wait.
Ang mag-upload mo siya, Miss.
Okay na siya? Is Lara around already?
Nana, miss.
Okay, thank you. So these are the
Good afternoon, miss.
services. Good
Mapagitawan ko
Okay.
nakasul.
Good afternoon. So again, these are the different support services that we can have. And if you want to further study these things, maybe Charles would like to become a doctor for the children, for the dentist. Maybe Elaine, you want to be a speech therapist in the future. So you can have these other support services for special needs. Now, in special education, we know that there are words that we cannot use anymore when we label these kids. So be mindful that as a teacher, we have sets of terms, common terms that are not allowed to mention. So what are these? Now, was there a time when someone hurt your feelings because you are labeled with terms or names that you don't want to be called? Na Bernard, yun ni ba? How does name calling make you feel?
Dili, Miss. Ay, kabutan ako, Miss.
Did you treat someone you call sir or ma'am with more respect? Or if someone is labeled as special, does it change how you treat them? So sometimes no, the power of words are really changing our character and changing our attitude and the way we respond. Now, how about you? If someone is mislabeled, would you rather sit or would you rather stand up for them? So the choice is for you to make. So sometimes in life, we make our choices with the words that we speak. No? Sometimes our choice of words when we labeled our friends, it depends also kung close kay mo, you can have that special endearment, 'di ba? Like I can remember before my friends would have that name calling as mga yads or megs. Sometimes Bernard has a weird way of calling his friends.
Iro, gawan.
Yeah, lahi daya, miss. Mga hinugawan daya, miss.
So how about you, Juliet? How would you feel if Bernard will call you those way?
Ay, naanad naman ko niya, miss.
Inood man tud na siya, Miss.
So first year you might have also you will it's just new for the first year. No, they will be finding their own set of friends this time. So maybe you have your own clique later on. Physically you will be able to find your own flock of feathers, but for now online pa man ta, di pa kayo makakita kinsa inyong mga makasundo gyud. But sila kaning mga fourth year, they had their own endearment. Di ba, Mary? What is your endearment? Henny, sa may mga endearment ninyo na mga words?
Na, kung miss ka nang, wala akong ganun sila Bernard, nilang Ann, kayo mag-diary miss na na. Nilang
Okay.
Juliet. Yun, magkuyog, wala kayo mong mga now.
So we
All of
usually
North
have
Juliet, Miss.
and
Awa na ba, we ginon karon.
so we usually have our own choices of endearment, and we always have these choices of words and flock of people where we go into, di ba? Motog yun mo anang birds of the same feather or feather duster. Diba? Or birds of the same feather are, they flock together. So in here, we want our life, our future as a teacher to be um, we need to fill our days with positive words and encouragement. So we use this one. You're a winner. You're love. You take pride in what you do. Fair, strength, enable, allow, able, unique, choice, possible, include, and we somehow have these negative words nga ma-hurt ka when someone tells you you're a loser. There will be hate words or hate posts. Sometimes the feeling of people who would give you certain words and maano ka, mabelittle, you feel shame, unfair, you feel weak or disabled, restricted, and you are feeling handicapped and impossible. And you know, a lot of people are experiencing these negative words that we experience, these negative words that we are reading. These are some of the words being felt by people who are having disabilities. And the power is yours to make. So there is this proper labeling, and there's an advantage and disadvantage of the proper labeling in special educational system. Number one, if a child is properly labeled, so we use the term first person. So, a child with disability, a child with Down syndrome, or a girl with Down syndrome, rather than calling them disabled person. So, dapat you start with a person with a noun and then the disability. So, if you would label them properly, like a child with Down syndrome, they are given these different advantages. First is he or she will have the IEP. Or obviously, because you pro-label the child will be guided with the necessary requirements in the curriculum guide. So once the child is identified, he can receive a lot of these programs from the teacher, from the SPED advocates, and the categories that we have for this different disability can also be explored. Next is there's an extra learning support. Like if you know in the classroom, this child DI is a child with learning disability. So si teacher will give a room for support, a room for space rather than ay bugo jud ting bata oy kapoy biyanig tudlo og reading oy dugay kay makasabot, dugay kay makakuha and then imo na lang siyang i-flunk or imong i-fail sa imong exam or quiz. But if you know that the child is having difficulty or having a dyslexic episode, you will have that idea, oh, okay, I'll extend my time. I'll give the chance to provide him with other options. So if they are labeled, they would receive this repetition, balik-balik ko ni teacher ang klase, ang lesson, and then instructions also are simplified for the children when they are labeled. Another thing is that the targeted instruction or the objectives should be meet. So, pwede ma-tweak ni teacher in the sense if children are labeled. So, the crucial way for them to learn, mas mahimo ni teacher nga task analysis in order for her to equip the child in a sense that the learning disability may challenge the child in the teaching learning process but still ma ma-uplift gyapon ang child nga yes naka-achieve jud ko ani masking lisod kayo ni for me di ko ka-identify color red but my teacher is so patient, my teacher is he keeps on repeating the lesson, the idea, my sister is patient with me, so ma-proud jud ang child kaysa sa imong ate din ha na label pa ka hindi pa jud katabangan di pa jud ka ma-feel loved or there's so many negative, the more the child will be belittled. Now, there are also disadvantages if they are labeled or like for example, makabalo ang mga silingan nga, uy, special ra ba na iyang mangkod? Kanang, uy, kuan, ara ba na sila yung anak nga kuan? Kanang special. So, sometimes there are also disadvantages. Like, for example, would you like to share, Cheska,
Sa unsa miss?
if there were any discrimination, if there was disadvantages from the people around, or wala ra?
Ang kung sa among silingan miss kay wala ra man miss kay daghan sad mi silingan nga na ay kuan kanang person with special needs ilang mga anak nga. Pero sa eskwelahan lang noon katong ingon ako sa mo miss nga katong gipa-try na mo siya og enter sa elementary school, public school, sa kinder niya. Kanang imbis ganahan siya makig-friends sa iyang mga classmates, pero iyang na siya isa ka classmate nga lalaki nga gasundon-sundon iyang kuan the way she speaks mo
Mm.
mo
Okay.
na siya miss dili
Thank
kanang mangusi na noon siya imbis makig-friends siya mo ra siya miss.
Okay, so there was a negative impact to the child, no? Because instead, the classmate would help and uplift. Mo ano na noon, it would result to defense mechanism. How about Nicole? Would you like to share something to us, Nicole?
Kuan miss, sa una nang sutagod miss kanang akong kuya is ang senior man siya nga. Kanang once mo gawas siya miss, ang mga bata kay sige magug ka bully niya ba. Kaya siya inagbuang na maglagot ako mami na muna. Kasi akong kuya ko na lang pasulod sa balay miss para dinala siya mo kuan.
Mm. Okay, thank you, Nicole. Nicole is very sweet to. I thought that's your younger brother. Kuya dito siya. Okay, so
Kuya to na miss.
Nicole is posting a lot of photos of his brother. Di gid siya ma-shy sa iyang brother. Like he used it as a my day or kanang awareness also for people to show love ba. So I'm really proud of you, Nicole. Keep it up gid sa imong brother. So sometimes also it's
Thank you
true,
miss.
no? It's true that we feel kanang self low self-esteem, especially for students, no? Even if we are a relative, mga ate or cousins perhaps, there's this labeling or sometimes bullying part of children with special needs, and these people also are experiencing this one. They have discrimination, just like what Nicole and Jessica mentioned, kanang maano sila from the society. They are labeled or they really name call ba. And how much more if dili nila ma-express o muhilak lang siguro na sila, and in the end, maybe aside sa paghilak, batantrum sila, sumanglabay sila in the household, ilang awayon, ilang mga family members, or samot na, sometimes people can also resort to aggressive way if they are labeled. Another thing is, teachers and parents can have this low expectation. Mana sila, ay, kuan mo na siya, di yun na siya kamao. Sagdi lang, ana lang na siya kutob. So sometimes, there is a set for lower expectation for the outputs for the child, or ay ayun na lang na siya paskwilaha, uy di raman gyapon na siya successful in life. So sometimes if you hear this one ba or teacher mo, ay ma'am dili lang na mo siya i-include sa among activities ma'am kay di man sad siya ka mao musayaw or magubot ra among klase ma'am. So hearing this one, it can be also part of the negative side. Another thing is that peer issues. So this one, they cannot have quality of friends, kaya nga naman mabully, or they have that low self-esteem and the self-image of the children is being compromised. And how are these people being defined? So the idea or the Individual Disability Education Act, they actually are labeled with 14 categories. So dili pwede na tawagon nimo sila tanan as special children because there's a specific term for them. There's a specific label for them. So, na different sad nga level and severity. So, this includes the following. So, autism, deafness, emotionally disturbance, or we call it the ED, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, orthopedic impairment, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, visual impairments, multiple disability. Grabe no, multiple disability. Pwede day, miss? Yes, pwede nga na siya two or more disability, just like Helen Keller. Na blind pa siya, deaf pa siya, nya mute pa gyud siya. Grabe na jud no. And other health impairments also can be part in the category of the idea. So, how are they labeled or how are they called to be part of that certain disability? So first, there is this process. So special education process. So I'll just give you the big picture. So first is di ba? Dili man jud right there and then malabeled ang child. So the teacher or whoever is exposed to that character of the child will have a referral. So even if it will be under your class, Teacher Mary or Teacher Elaine, ya mo think jud ka nga hala na jud ni sa lesson na mo ang child ba kay kuan jud siya, suwak jud kay siya sa iyang checklist, nga na jud siya autism. You cannot tell the parent right there and there. We cannot label the child. It should go to a process. Or even if your neighbors are manifesting certain disability, um, mga red flags, dili ka pwede mo label kay pwede ka ma-priso. But you can refer with your observation, with your observational tools, your records, your evidences. So the children will be checked into the evaluation. So in Philippines, in Cebu in particular, we have doctors, Dr. Altonaga and Dr. Espina. They are the ones who checked and assess the child if that child is autism, if that child has visual impairment, and we have doctors who would label them. Then before na sila ma-enroll sa special education schools. Then we also check the eligibility, meaning are they able to receive some free services from our government, from the schools? Then if okay na, i-endorse na sila sa mga special education teacher where they will create an IEP or program. So in Cebu, in the Philippines, mag-work lang ana si parent, si principal, and the special education teachers. But sa States, you will work with so many people in the IEP team. Kailangan ba ni child sa OTPT? Kailangan ba niya counseling? Kailangan ba niya o kanang clinician, mga doctors who would help if ma-seizure siya? There's also placement. If the child should be labeled in like grade 1 level pa siya or ibalik ba siya sa grade 3 or accelerate na siya, doon na siya sa grade 7 even if he or she is young age. Then there would be modification and accommodation of the instructions of the teacher. Then there will also annual review na meet ba ang iyang IEP? Was the child performing well or not? Then the process goes back. So to navigate, this is actually the IEP program and the process for the implementation for the children with special needs. So pre-referral includes your teacher's observational tools. So do not label, but you can somehow gather your data. Then you send the letter either to the parents or to the principal na ang child kailangan siya i-assess. So that roughly happens 15 days or sometimes earlier pa siya if kanang labi nag-aggressive kang kaayo ang child niya, kailangan gyud siya i-identify unsa siya na disability para either ma-expelled siya sa school or ma-transferred siya in a particular proper school for him. Then inform the parents that they will have to check for a testing, either academics, physical, or medical check-up for the child. Kaya sometimes ang mga onset sa child or the way nga mo manifest ang special child kay mahappen siya sa grade 1 baron or murag maklaro na jud ang iyahang mga characteristics or disability ba. Because in preschool, dili pa man kay nimo makita like kiat jud ni siya nga bata. So maybe Teacher Elaine will have so many children nga magsigig dagan-dagan. Nya pag adto niya sa grade 1, hala dili naman jud siya matame kay ADHD day ang child. So sometimes si teacher mo go back na sa mga preschool teacher. Do you have data? Do you have your typical day reports? What was the characteristic of the child? So ilan ang kuhaon ang mga data to evaluate, to support that the child is having this certain disability. Then after that, there will be evaluation with those experts. So muna, if you want to be expert, you study again. If money is not an issue, no, we could have uh, taken these courses, OTPT, mga speech pathologists nga tagpila ka thousand ang ilahang payment when we have the session. Then there will be an IEP meeting. So, unsaon nila pag-address sa mga strengths, sa weaknesses, and the goals for the child. Then they will also implement, that is the instructional side, and then annual meeting, that will be the revision. So, they need to reassess if the child was promoting or if the child is successfully able to understand what's going on with him. So somehow the special education process follows this specific goal. So there's an assessment for the child, getting the IEP goals together with the IEP people. Another one is the placement and the services intended for them and how are these things being implemented. Okay, we will learn more about special education next Tuesday. Are you learning, guys? Are you excited to learn more about special education?
Yes, miss.
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, now
Yes,
that you
miss.
know about the history, that there are underlying dark stories for special education and how it was somehow shed light on the people and to give them hope that you don't need to put them in the prison or really put them into dungeon. And there are also proper way to label them. Your exam, I mean, on Thursday, I will give you a 20-item quiz, identification, multiple choice. And there's also a reflection that you need to answer. Next Tuesday, I will not meet you, but you have to answer 60-item multiple choice for your exam. Okay? The links will be open from 12 until 2 p.m. Okay, Ra? So again, Thursday, there's a quiz, 20 items, multiple choice, and an activity. Tuesday, online exam, 60 items, multiple choice, 12 to 2 p.m. Okay, question, clarification.